Everybody, this is the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. I'm here with Brett Riggins. How are you doing, Brett?
Happy Turkey Day, Thomas. How are you doing?
Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm doing well. Thank you.
So we're recording on Thanksgiving,
Yep.
and not sure when it will actually post, but it is Thanksgiving, and you are celebrating. Well, I don't know if you actually eat turkey, but you're in Turkey, so you're in Istanbul, Turkey, and we're celebrating Turkey Day.
That's right. Yep. I'm in Turkey celebrating Turkey Day from Turkey.
Very cool. Very cool. And you're telling me that there's actually a lot of random cats that you're noticing in Turkey, huh? In
Yeah,
Istanbul.
there are a lot of stray cats, and there are a lot of cat fights happening here very often too. That I hear every few hours. I'll hear cats going at it, so it's entertaining. But it's
That's
a beautiful
awesome.
place, beautiful
Cool.
culture.
Very cool.
So,
So,
Brett, today I wanted to talk with you about a few different things. One that was on my mind was creating passive income for doctors. I know being a doctor, you're caught up in your work constantly, and you're really just trading your time for money, which, as we both know, to get out of that, you have to create a source of passive income. So I just wanted to throw the question at you. If you were a doctor, or if you were maybe giving advice to a doctor wanting to create that passive income source, what would be your recommendations? Where would you kind of send them to get started on that journey?
my question, I guess my answer to your question is always another question. Where are we at? What's the scenario that we're talking about?
Sure.
What's my capital availability? What's my time availability? What do I like to do? So there's lots of things in there that would come back to you. So in a hypothetical scenario, let's pick one. Thomas, what say you? Give me some more criteria so we can make a good suggestion.
Yeah. So let's just say hypothetically, we got someone who's been a doctor for the past decade. They've been working. They have a family. They have some capital, not a lot. Maybe let's say $50,000 liquid cash. They may own the residential property. They may still have a mortgage on it, and their experience in real estate is very limited. So let's just roll with a scenario like that.
Okay, so 10 years out of residency, it sounds like, sitting on some cash, 50K liquid. They have a family
Yep, family, two daughters and a
and
son.
two daughters and a son. Wow, okay, now we're getting there. And a son. All right, and a primary residence, likely to have a mortgage on that as well too. So the reason why I'm pushing in on this stuff, because my mind then is going to opportunity, right? Opportunity, and for me being a father as well too, where do I want to put my time? What do I want to do? So my first look at this particular scenario would be just acquiring a single family rental in the real estate world. The outsides of that, and maybe looking at just what I call kill and eat returns, whether it's a syndication or finding a partner to work with, that kind of thing. There's just lots of different ways, but I think with this particular scenario, I'm not seeing like a full frontal attack on the real estate portfolio. What would you say, Thomas?
And are you saying that mostly because of the time limitation that this hypothetical doctor has? And call him
Yeah.
Dr. John.
Dr. John. Dr. John, yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on there. And as a physician, I could only imagine. I'm very passionate about what I do as a profession, and I know that limits my time with my family. So when I do step away from my career, I want to devote as much time as possible to my family, and kind of like weighing this up and down. Living in the Now, which is a great book, by the way. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. Thomas, you read that one. The
Definitely one of
Power
those
of
you got to read more than once. That's
I
for sure.
know, I know. I get overwhelmed. We were talking with Capital Impact the other day, and I get overwhelmed when there's so many connections, like my brain is trying to fire to understand the conversation. Similar when I'm reading this, The Power of Now. But just that's by Eckhart Tolle, if anybody's interested in that. Awesome. And that's what I'm focused on, living in the moment and the value of that versus this passive income or this goal or this destination. The value that I place on being able to spend that time with my children now as opposed to something in the future is always what I'm weighing. So that's a big piece of it, Thomas. The other things I'm looking at is just the numbers too, like 50 liquid. What could I do with 50 liquid? And having to pay somebody basically to do the work that I don't want to do because I don't have the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are the big things. The time with the family was a huge piece for me in this scenario. I know that I struggle with that balance, and I know probably a lot of physicians. And being Turkey Day, both of us kind of shifted our lives remotely here, and we're both away from our families. So I'm sure a lot of physicians don't have that time to spend with their family in the same way are working on this Thanksgiving Day as well too. So I think that's a big piece of it. What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, I agree with the approach of acquiring a single family. Being a busy professional and having a family is going to make it difficult to spend a lot of time on it, but it is definitely possible. And I think it is the best thing to do. And leveraging, like we talked about in a previous episode, leveraging relationships to accomplish that goal with agents, property managers, etc. Because doing it all yourself is going to make it much more harder on yourself than it has to be. And I think that not just acquiring it, but also once you have it acquired is another really important piece of the puzzle to get plugged in with a property manager.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking days like today, and leading into this particular conversation, Thomas and I usually have this idea, okay, what are we looking at? What's the discussion here today? And I was thinking about talking about property management, specifically on days like today, Thomas, when you have that idea, if you're managing something yourself and something goes wrong, well, guess what? It doesn't matter if it's Thanksgiving or if it's Christmas or if it's Tuesday or Wednesday or January, it doesn't matter. You got to take care of it. So having the right team in place so you can be passive, you can have your holidays, you can spend your time with your family. That property manager is a huge piece of this equation.
Yeah. And we both hear this all the time. Probably everyone listening hears this all the time, that the reason they don't want to get into real estate is because they don't want to be fixing toilets.
I don't want to fix no toilet. Yeah.
And I don't think anybody wants to be fixing toilets. But you don't have to be, because what you can do is you can have the team in place in the property management company that would be outsourcing that for you. So you don't have to take calls, be interrupted on days like today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The toilets. So in my journey in real estate, I have relationships with toilets, Thomas.
That's it. I've never heard someone say that before.
Yeah. So I thought and I could almost even measure my experience because we did a lot of the sweat equity learning, and I call it learning and burning time and learning, that kind of stuff. But from the flips, and I started acquiring toilets, and there's $100 toilet and there's a $200 toilet, and learning the difference between the two. And, as you start acquiring more properties, more opportunities to build this relationship with the toilet, then you have I know what a $100 toilet will do. I know what a $200 toilet will do. I know what it won't do. In a property management scenario, I need things that perform and perform well. But over the time, man, I'm sure there's, many more people that have bought way more toilets than I have, but I've bought quite a few toilets over the years. And I've also said, I don't want to fix toilets. I've said that. I've picked up the property management piece, learned from actually doing, and now I know what I want a property manager to do and what I expect a property manager to provide for me. And, that whole idea of fixing toilet, that's one of them. And set up the systems and processes to where I don't care. I want, as an owner, I want a good asset. I want it to perform well. I want it to be I want to provide great housing, a great home for a family. And piece of that is, the things that should happen are happening. And, kind of getting tied up on this toilet issue is like that toilet needs to perform. But if it doesn't, that property manager is there with the system and process to take care of it, that I don't have to hear about. I don't even have to know about it. Once a month, I'm looking at my expenses and I can see, hey, this particular property we had, a little higher expense here. What happened? Then I could see that if I wanted to get down in the weeds on it.
Right. Yeah. And it's a question that I have with someone who doesn't have experience like you have with your toilets, your relationship
my
with your
toilets.
toilet.
My
Someone
thrones.
who's maybe their first time owning a property, but they know that they don't want to go through the same process you have with building those relationships and buying dozens of toilets. How do you know if a property management company is a good property management company? I mean, how do you, if you don't have the experience and you're not sure what the difference between toilet A and toilet B is, or a good tenant and a bad tenant, then how do you know if you're working with someone or a company that is a good company versus not a good one?
It's a great question. And I think my suggestion would be to speak with 3, 4, 5 different actual investors or landlords. And you can go from the chuck in the truck, or the landlord that owns in their personal name and does all the property management. Ask those questions to them. Hey, what are some things that allow me to hold my team accountable for? And I'm talking about numbers. And I can look at my portfolio based off my numbers, based off my owner reports that we get every month. What are the expenses? What are the incomes? Are there delinquencies? Are there any vacancies? These are the things that I'm looking at and I'm watching, and I can tell in trends if I'm just looking at these every single month that I can then hold my team accountable for. So it's not as much the toilet itself. That may be a decision or a discussion I'm having with my construction team, my renovation team on the front side. Hey, don't put toilet AB in here because last time we had to replace it, in 6 months, right? So I'm seeing that as an expense. I'm relating this back from my monthly reports. So the suggestion would be to talk with landlords, talk with property owners who outsource this, and what are the numbers that they're looking for? How are they able to look at a monthly report and then know, is the team performing, or do we need to make changes?
Right. So really, relationships are key. They're crucial in every aspect. Finding landlords in your area, going to meetups, creating these connections, and just picking up the phone, calling and talking to people, asking these questions that we're talking about.
Yeah. Being around other like-minded individuals, like as a physician, more than likely, and I wrote this not too long ago, I said just lift your head up. Like lift your head up, look around. More than likely, you're going to constantly be around people who are or who have done what you're looking to do. Ask them what's worked for them, what doesn't work. And just make sure that you too, when you gauge these conversations with people, is understand, hey, how many doors do you have, right? How many rentals do you have? And that to me means a lot on what to expect too. How long have they been a property owner, those kinds of things, because then I can gauge, because you never know who you're talking to. And it's even more important than who you're talking to is understanding what you're talking to. Are you talking to someone who has experience, or are you talking to somebody who's just read something, Yeah,
that's so true. Yeah, I mean, you can read all the books and not actually do anything, and you learn more from actually taking the action than you would if you read 100 books on a specific topic. So, yeah.
And just for everybody to know too, I personally have 17 doors right now. We've had over 20, and we've taken a few different opportunities to sell and stuff like that. I want more, and I'm to a spot now where we have I would say 80% of our stuff outsourced with property managers. Our portfolios range from single family residentials, with duplex, quadplex. We've got mixed use commercial. We've got I've actually picked up a couple houses where they're zoned to be commercial, but they're still residential. So that's kind of like the depth of what our portfolio currently looks like. I do see us heading more into single family just because the opportunities that we're doing or that we're seeing with the acquisition company, Connect Home Buyers, with different relationships we've built in different markets as well too, with Physician Wealth System. So there's just these two things pairing in. And I don't know, I've always got my eyes open for these apartment buildings too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like everyone wants to get into
It's
into
cool.
the big leagues, the apartments.
So we did a development project. I think we spent almost 3 years of our life on a development project, and I heard it, but I hadn't experienced it yet. It's like development is the cool thing to do. Everybody thinks it's cool to develop property or do development projects, and it was super stressful. There's a lot to it. But yeah, just having that experience and going through it, and I don't want to do that again unless I've got the right people around me. Because every time you touch something, it's a 100%, it's a full-time job. Doing a development project, not only is it a full-time job, but it's a whole new business. An apartment building is a whole new business. There's a whole new side of things to go around where, hey, if you pick up a single family residential, the return is not as high, and we're talking volume wise, not rate wise, but volume wise, but it's a lot easier just to get into. So Bronson, back to this hypothetical with Dr. John, right? Was that his name?
Yeah, Dr. John.
Dr. John had 50K liquid. It's a lot easier to get introduced into the world that way. And that's why I always consider single family residential as a level one. And that's a great way to get in because it's easy to get out. Say, hey, this is Dr. John says, hey, I'm good. I don't need any of this. Okay, great. Well, you can liquidate because anybody can buy that single family home. A Chuck in a truck to do a flip, a landlord, first time home buyer. You're going to be in these pockets where it's so easy to liquidate. Also makes me think, Thomas, of apartment versus single family residential. Is why would I need 50 roofs when I can do it with one roof, right? If I have 50 residential houses, units, we call them doors, I have 50 roofs, where if I had one apartment building, I would have one roof to be concerned with. There's pros and cons on both sides. And I've heard through the years, different colleagues, everybody's always got an opinion, right? Just like an elbow, everybody's got one, but actually they have two. And just kind of like going in that direction of which works best for you and for your approach and what's taking you closer to your goals, giving you, like for me, what allows me to spend more time with my family, those kind of things weigh into these. Ultimately, I'm good with single families. I'm good with quad, tris, duplex, all that stuff. When the time is right, I will move into the apartment arena. And it's not as a syndication either. I'm talking about controlling. I'm talking about building the relationships, working with the team. You actually bought me a great book not too long ago. Do you remember what that book was?
I feel like I can't say I do remember. I know I bought you a few.
I'm gonna get the library right behind me, and this is it right here. It's Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate. Yeah. So on this journey, again, I want to be completely transparent with everybody so you know who you're talking to and what their experience is. I do not own any apartment buildings. I own mixed-use commercial, where we've got, I think our biggest one is 1, 2, 3 apartments up in it. But I did set off on this journey. You gave me this book and I crushed it. I read through it. It's awesome. Yeah. I love it. And I flew to Washington, D.C. We've got some colleagues that own apartment buildings in Washington, D.C. So I was able to spend a few days with them and get inside of the buildings, walk the buildings, learn the buildings, see the owner's reports, and really start understanding that's a whole different approach. It's a whole nother world doing stuff like that.
I think what you said at the beginning is levels. I think it's a great way to view it. Just getting started, probably going to be best. Go with that single family, add on a few more single family, maybe some multifamily, duplex, triplex, etc. One thing that I like to offer to John or anybody else is an unorthodox way of investing, especially your first time investing, which is a strategy called house hacking. And it's a strategy that I've been looking into myself quite a bit. And it's essentially where you go and buy a house. Typically, it's going to be a duplex or multifamily, live in one side of the house, and then rent out the other side. Now, for John with his family, obviously you're sacrificing some privacy because you're going to be living next to your tenants. So it may not be the most ideal strategy for John, but there are plenty of benefits in doing this, one of which is leveraging capital. When you're applying for a conventional loan, primary residence conventional loan, your interest rate is going to be much lower, about 0.5 to 0.75% lower than a investment loan, and your down payment. So if John only has $50,000 in liquid cash and he wanted to buy a $300,000 duplex as an investment, he would need around 25% down, which is roughly $75,000. So he wouldn't be able to, he would have to save up for a little longer. But if he did the house hacking strategy, he could get a 3% down, 3.5% down payment as a primary conventional loan, which only equates to about 9% or $9,000. So he could go ahead and purchase that and then rent out the other side, which would then pay for his mortgage. And if it's done properly, could even pay more than his mortgage and cash flow on top of it.
I to the family thing. So I always say that a renovation project is a true test of a marriage. It is so stressful, and then living inside of it. So my history too, I went to school for construction management, engineering, architectural engineering. I was with a small, tight, closely held, family-owned business, right? Design build firm, and we would move in with people when we were renovating their homes. So the challenge, the test of a marriage is that renovation side, because not only is it a money issue, and that's also a test in relationships, but the fact that somebody's in your stuff, man, every single day, saws and hammers and just the dangers of your children, basically living on a construction site. So that's definitely a challenge. Even past that, Thomas, what would you say about, what would other people think if say Dr. John, if people found out that Dr. John lives in a crappy duplex, that he's fixing up? What does that say for his image as a doctor?
Well, I think that's a good question, but as anyone who wants to start something new, you're gonna have people who are gonna cast doubt at you, no matter what it is. So you always have to figure out a way to get past people that are gonna be putting you down and maybe trying to pull you back to where they are. Because when people start seeing you do new things, sometimes they may support you and other times they may not. So it is something that's very difficult to manage. But with house hacking, you don't necessarily have to go in and do a renovation. I know of people who've done it straight from the market. Matter of fact, there was someone, I moved into a house hack on Airbnb in Charlotte. It was a brand new build that he bought. It was a 5-bedroom, 4-bath. This was a little bit different because it wasn't actually a multifamily. He was single. He didn't have a family, so he had the advantage here to be able to rent it by individual rooms. But he was bringing in, I believe it was $850 per bedroom. He was living in one bedroom, and he had 4 other bedrooms rented out at 95% occupancy. That's over $3,000. His mortgage was only $1,800. And so something like that, if you're able to, is an excellent strategy. It's super easy to get into. You don't necessarily have to find a super good deal and fix it up yourself, unless you want to have that extra equity and cash flow on it. But back to your question, I think it's going to happen no matter what you're going to be doing. And so you just have to really get past what other people think about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big piece. I think we talk about that a lot, the whole mindset of making the shift from what everybody sees you as. and then really where you need to be in order to make this difference in your life. And it's going to come back down to your why and what's the ultimate turn of why are you looking for passive income, right? Where are you trying to go? And really leaning hard on that to understand, where it is that you're going. Because just like when I cautioned everybody about who you talk to, you really need to understand of what are their results, what have they done, what's their experience. Because I'm sure anybody that's looked at social media, everybody's cool on social media, everybody's rich on social media, everybody, has presented this perspective of themselves that they want you to see. They've sold what they want you to see. They sold you on that. And, it really, with the direction of investing, is like, you've got to sell yourself on where you want to go, but understand that everybody else is selling you on what they want you to see as well, too.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
But as far as Dr. John, the family thing is a big, I don't know, for some reason on Thanksgiving today, it's hitting me on getting hung up on that. And that's a whole different world, like when you bring your family into it. But if say for the physician that's listening to us right now that doesn't have that family quite yet, or maybe has found this significant other, maybe the children are a big piece of it, right? But the significant other is going to play a big piece of this, right? And that can also be a massive factor in your wealth generation, is that particular decision that you make. But you had mentioned the Airbnb thing, and I think that's a great thing to touch on. If the physician doesn't necessarily have family, that's an awesome opportunity then. Even per room kind of thing, given the right MSA, the right area that you're in, that's an awesome place. And maybe it's if you're in residency, right? There's probably others around you. And you guys, don't get me wrong, I have no idea what it's like to be a physician. I have no idea. And I can only imagine certain pieces. I do know real estate. There's a lot that I want to keep learning about real estate. I don't know everything about real estate. I'm definitely more comfortable in real estate than I am talking about being a physician. So I can only imagine certain things. But in a residency, you've probably picked up, and a lot of times you've shifted your life to fulfill this, to get this opportunity to be a resident. And again, I'm assuming this. So you've picked up your life and you've transferred to a new facility. And maybe there's others around you just like that. I mean, how many people that are in residency with you have been displaced from from where they've grown up? So that's just, jumps into my mind as opportunity. What if you were to reach out to residents as soon as you got in and say, hey, we're looking at putting a place together. I mean, that would be cool. So you got a chance to create additional income. And there's the arbitrage for renting places out, but then Airbnb it as well too. So you wouldn't have to own real estate, Thomas. You could rent a place and then find the network of people to then rent out on the in-between. Now, granted, yes, getting into some issues with subletting and making sure that you're, what to look at when you're looking at your lease agreements and those kind of things. But there's just so much opportunity out there. It comes back to where are you at as a physician, right? And where is your life? And then with those given criteria, let's form the direct path forward for you.
Yeah. I think to your point, there's so many different strategies, and it just depends on where you're at and where you want to go and how fast you want to get there. And right. Once you know those things, then you can quickly identify, okay, this is what we got to do, and just start taking action one step at a time or one door at a time.
Yep. And recently I put together a strategy where I could literally take $250,000, $250,000 and implement this strategy with a network of, experienced team members. So that network is in place. You've got the 250. I've put together a platform to where you could acquire one property every single month for 12 months. And that's a whole different game. So say if you're sitting on 250, maybe you got another 150, that's three, four. So between $400,000 and $500,000 paying somebody to do this for you, that's a whole different game than just being in residency or, having a young family only sitting on 50K, which let's not play that down though, Thomas. $50,000 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And we get so hardened. I think I call this a new, a psychological state. I think I'm comma hardened, right? I'm hardened. My eyes, my heart, everything is hardened by commas because commas have moved so far, even in the last 5 years for me, right? From one comma to two commas, talking about, oh, you're not rich until you have three commas, this kind of stuff. But we will get hardened at this. But the reality of it is $50,000 is a lot of money. And just make sure that we never come away from that, understanding that that's a lot of money. I mean, what could you do with $50,000 in Colombia, in Medellin, Colombia?
Oh man, you would be the richest dude on the block with 50K.
Come on, absolutely.
Yeah, you'd be balling out.
That's interesting. I want to talk about that for a little bit too. Investing in other areas, it's risky. I'm not the one to listen to about this. I've never invested outside of the United States. But just what you could do with the money, like Medellin, Colombia, or Medellin, however you say it, is interesting because the cost of living is so dramatically different. It's crazy. If you have the opportunity to be a consultant or live virtually, nomadic, right? That's the word. It's crazy because you could live a lifestyle, spend less money, but live a lifestyle of pure wealth there. We're talking chef, we're talking food delivered for you, laundry services, maid services, rent on a luxury place, all for less than just living at the normal standard here.
Yeah. Just for perspective, the average salary in Colombia in US dollars is about $200 a month, which is not much to Americans. But in Colombia, things are much different. So, and to your point of investing in real estate internationally and out of country, if you're someone who travels and you can spot opportunities, like you saw Medellin 10 years ago and you got in there now, or 10 years ago with development, it has completely transformed the tourist industry. They're really pushing hard to get more tourism down there. And if you can spot those opportunities early, you can definitely make a lot of money off of the investments if you get in early and you understand the market and what movement's happening.
We were down there, I don't know when it was, 3 months ago or something like that. I don't know. It was earlier this year, right?
Yeah.
And we travel all over the place, and I wear my Connect Homebuyer shirts. And then my Connect Homebuyer shirt, on the back of that shirt, in English, it says, I buy houses, and then a phone number. So we're going places where, Colombia, there's quite a few people that speak English there, right? It's not as different like Croatia. There was still English there, but it was one of the first places where we walked where I just couldn't understand anything. Anyway, wearing this shirt, and somebody stopped me just outside of my Airbnb, and he was looking to sell his little flat. And what he was pitching me on was, well, they had recently approved to go up to like 4 or 5 stories because hostels are huge there, like pushing to build, basically redevelop and build these hostels 4 or 5 levels there in, what's the El Poblado, right? El Poblado.
Yeah, in El Poblado is the richest neighborhood there. Yeah, a lot of backpackers. So they want to build up more hostels and for tourists.
Yeah, it's just coming back to the States on investing in Dr. John. I mean, there's just so many different ways, but I'm still thinking that I see Dr. John as, finding that first single family rental. And then once you grab that, okay, how can I leverage one, how do I acquire it? There's ways that I could acquire it that gives me more equity, more momentum, more velocity in what I'm doing. But then how do I use that to grow the next one and then the next one, and then building those relationships, as you go to get there. One of the things we talked about too is in that direction, leveraging relationships. One relationship that I love is our virtual assistants. And that's going to come back down to, the cost of living too. You said, was it 200 or 400, the average salary in
From what I
Colombia?
know, 200
From what
US
you know,
dollars.
source unknown, right? When we're writing books,
Yeah,
source unknown. We don't
I don't
know.
know where I heard that, but it stuck with me. So
So, and a lot of our VA relationships come out of the Philippines. And the Philippines, $2.50 an hour is like the standard virtual assistant um, income. And you think for us, I mean, that's nothing, right? Even to go 40 hours a week with somebody, just imagine what that person can do with you and for you at that pay scale. And if Dr. John doesn't have the time to go to join these Facebook groups, to go to these REI meetups and look, virtually look at the comments, reach out to people, well, guess what? That's exactly what the virtual assistant does. So if you think, I mean, what is this? We're only talking a few $100s a week, right? Let's see, 2.5 times 40. Whoa, $100 a week, Thomas. So imagine how even at a learning pace, imagine what Dr. John could do by investing $100 a week. But there would be time though too. You have to think of that because you have to have what works best with virtual assistants is you have to have simple tasks spelled out clearly on standard operating procedures, right? Start easy, start simple. So in that regard, I mean, Dr. John would have to go to the eMyth strategy, right? Learn, implement, and then outsource, creating these things. But just think about what Dr. John could do with $100 a week with this virtual assistant, joining the Facebook groups, go to the landlords associations and just watching, keeping your eyes out for properties, and just say, hey, this is because that could be the difference. You could take that 50, say you got a smoking deal, you could turn your 50K liquid into something where you got a $20,000 off a purchase price or something because you had your VA out looking for these deals. You've just, increased your opportunity.
yeah, there's so much that you can use a virtual assistant for with going through your emails, looking at deals for you, even calling and reaching out to people, establishing relationships, managing your calendar, setting up meetings with people. I mean, you can really save a lot of time by leveraging hiring a virtual assistant, and they're the most grateful people too. It doesn't seem like much, but 250 the conversion in the Philippines is much different than it is over here. So,
yeah.
You may hear that number and feel bad, but it's actually a pretty good salary.
I love it because the opportunity, and just like when you and I first met, just the opportunity that we create for each other is massive. In that same way, who you are here, who you are in your relationships here is who you will be in relationships, no matter if they're in the Philippines, they're in Croatia, they're in Colombia. It doesn't matter. You are you, and you're going to treat people the same way that you do. Just like I say, when money only amplifies who you are. So money only amplifies the good or the bad in you. The same way, even though that exchange rate is different for that country, just think of the opportunity. So me as a person, I give to my fault, right? I give as much as I can. And I feel it's a true blessing to be able to offer that opportunity to somebody overseas. Right. And say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how you will excel at it, and watch them grow in that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. My no longer have a virtual assistant currently, but my previous virtual assistant, I mean, it was a joy to get on a call and always, share what we're grateful for each day with each other.
Yep. And I think that could be a whole nother discussion multiple discussions is virtual assistants. Like, first thing I would say is, why don't you have a virtual assistant anymore? What happened? How did you see that happening? Because you're not by them. How are you holding them accountable? That's a whole nother discussion, do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
So on Dr. John, yeah, it's so hard to go into hypotheticals. It's almost like we had like live call-ins on the podcast would be fun, don't you think? Is that even possible?
Anything's possible. So yeah, of
Huh,
course.
interesting. So if we had certain scenarios, we could be given hypotheticals. Dr. Susan calls in and she says, "Hey, this is what this is what I'm working with. This is my liquid deploy capital. This is my goals. This is what I would like to do. What would you suggest for me?" That would be fun to say, okay, what about this, this, and this? This is where I would suggest for you to start. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to see if we set something up like that in the near future.
Very interesting. Because then we could remove, it would still be hypothetical to some extent, but we could have more criteria in order to make suggestions.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea.
So maybe we can do something on like we've got like a free Facebook group that we could put out as a resource, and people could go on the Facebook group and just make suggestions, or we could. I think that would be really helpful for people.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's a great idea, and I'd love to set something up like that in the future.
Yeah. So as far as Dr. John goes, I think, man, we're just building relationships. First of all, just getting in these groups. You go to your hometown or whatever town. There's a whole. You don't have to own in your own town. It makes it easier if you're doing the work yourself. If that's it. If you got to fix the toilet yourself, it's easier if it's in your backyard. But if your backyard is not a good market, then you shouldn't be in your backyard, right? So we talked about doing the outside in approach. So maybe for Dr. John, maybe that's the first step. You figure out what market he needs to be in. And then because everything's virtual anymore, really after COVID, it's made it so easy to be virtual. I can build relationships. I can purchase properties. I can do everything I need to do virtually, remotely. Yep. So maybe just going from the outside in, then I can decide which groups I need to join on Facebook, which meetup.coms I need to be at, who I need to talk to first. How do I talk to that real estate agent? Where do I find the property manager? So start from the outside in. So my final answer for Dr. John is pick your market.
Yes. Yeah, pick the market and then start moving from that market.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So I think we could have a whole nother episode on markets too. I think that would be a good idea to talk about. Okay, step one is pick your market. And that's number one. And then, okay, how do I pick my market? What's that mean? What's a good market? What's a bad market? What am I looking for? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That opens up a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah. And really that is step number one, is pick your market.
Yep.
Let me write that down.
So Brett, any final closing words you'd like to make before we close it on this episode here?
Dr. John, good luck to you in the hypothetical world. I hope you do well with your money. I want to make sure that you stay tuned for this upcoming episode on the first step of picking your market. I think that's going to be really, really important. And my biggest takeaway from here today is happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you get the chance to spend some time with your family. And stay tuned here with us, and that way we can give you some more of that time back, so you stop trading time for money, and that you can always, whether it's spend with your family or work because you want to, not because you have to.
Yes, 100%. Happy Thanksgiving and happy Christmas and New Year's. I don't know when this will be out, but I'm sure it'll be closer to that time then. So happy Christmas and New Year.
Well, very good. All right. Very good.